Hi everyone, and welcome back to Waterhouse Forde. So today we're going to make a start on the crankshaft. Now obviously it's quite a complicated setup there with all the end caps and where the oil seals go. So we're going to work through it slowly and get that, well obviously we'll try and show you everything, but also frankly we need to remember how it all goes back together again as well ourselves. So we're going to make a start on that. I'll bring you over in a minute. We'll just show you the parts that we're going to be using, predominantly the crankshaft itself and the new bearings, and then obviously the main bearing caps, which is what we've prepared so far. Like I say, there's an oil seal and it's a felt seal, so we need to show you exactly how to work with that. But yeah, hope you enjoy it, and we're going to get started. Here we go. Okay, so what we've got obviously is the main bearing caps. That's obviously the end one. I believe that's the middle one, and that's the opposite end. Those have been cleaned up. We're going to move those out of the way for a minute. We've then got obviously the crankshaft. Now this is obviously a new one. You can see obviously from Anglo. And the part number is A67403, and that fits the TE20, the TEA20 and the TED20 according to that. But you can see that's nicely packaged in a nice plywood box, which is obviously to protect it. We're going to open that up in a minute. And then we've got the main bearings, which are A57594. That's the standard bearing. Obviously with a new crankshaft we use a standard bearing. Now why are we replacing the crankshaft? Well, the old one was showing signs of some wear. We could have just had it skimmed, but obviously first of all we wanted to show you the new parts from Anglo, but also when I measured one of the journals on the crankshaft, it was quite oval, and I was a little bit concerned about whether they'd be able to get that out with the sort of 20 thou, 30 thou that you can accommodate. Anyway, so those are the main parts. There will be the, as I said, the felt seal and a couple of other seals that we'll need to work with as well. We're going to bring those in as we need them, but that's what we're going to be using today.
Crankshaft.
Well done, Oscar.
Woohoo!
Okay, there's a couple of other things that we needed from the gasket set. That's the bottom gasket set. The first one is the where is it? The felt seal, which we're soaking in oil at the moment, and then inside there's a little bag, and in the bag there's 2 cork seals as well. We're going to need those as well. And then you also need an A57170, which is your main crankshaft oil seal. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it's actually split. And the reason for that is because it has to be able to go over behind this flange and sit on there. And then it gets held closed by the actual housing when you clamp it down. We'll show you as we go. And then, of course, you just need all the bolts. So the main obviously the main bearing cap bolts. I don't know if you can see this in the picture. Hang on, let's turn this sideways a little bit. So there's the main bearing cap bolts. There's 6 of those, obviously, and then there's 2 small. They're called cheese head screws in the manual. I guess it's because the top looks like a round of cheese, and they actually sit and hold this aluminium cap on top of the number 3 main bearing cap. We'll show you again as we go. Right, so let's get into it. Oscar, we're going to open the bearings. Do you want to come and open those up? So they're in a cellophane. Keep them nice and safe.
Please, a knife.
Okay, well done. Now be careful, you definitely don't want to drop them on the floor, and then I just want to show you. Just get one out, just one. Okay, now you see here, there's a couple of things about a bearing. Firstly, this surface here is what they call a white metal surface, and that's your bearing surface, okay? So it is softer than the metal on your crankshaft, and what that means is it will wear out before, in theory, before the crankshaft journal does, okay? Unless there's a problem. The other thing is you've got a groove in the center and a hole. And that hole, basically, you see there's a hole in the journals as well, but also when you go over to the engine, you'll see there's a hole in the engine as well. And that's where oil comes up through that hole, and then it runs, obviously, along this groove and oils your bearing in both directions. And then it comes through and it runs out and goes out the other side and runs into your conrod bearings, okay? So basically the oil comes up here and it comes out here, and then it goes along there and it comes out. So this one, this main bearing probably feeds these 2, and that one feeds this one, and this one feeds that one. Something like that. Okay?
So it isn't a pipeline like...
It's not all the way through, it's just 2, these 2 are connected, these 3 are connected, and those 2 are connected. Probably. Something like that. Now on some sets, the other thing to note, you see you've got this piece where it's been kicked out. That's called a locating tab, and that's so you know that goes in where when you put it into the housing, you'll see there's a hole for that, so that sits there, and the other side, this one will sit. The opposing one needs to sit on the other side like that. Okay. And generally speaking, you always put these on the same side. Okay. When you're reassembling, but what that also does is it prevents these from turning themselves. You see how that one can't turn past that lip and that one can't turn past that one. So it stops them from turning and ensures that the bearing surface takes acts as a bearing rather than the back, which is just normal metal. Okay, so. And the other very important thing to remember, especially with these white metal bearings, is that cleanliness is the most important thing, right? So everything we do, we've got to keep it clean. We've got to make sure there's no dust. We've got to keep our hands clean. We have a cloth handy. We wipe everything over and over and over. Because again, we're assembling the engine and we're not going to be running it for a while, we'll be putting grease onto the surface, okay? But again, you only put grease on the bearing surface, not on the back. You don't want it to be lubricated at the back, right? But normally, if we were just assembling and then we were expecting to start the engine in a week or 2 weeks' time, then we just use oil. We wouldn't use grease. But because this is going to be standing for a while, we're going to use grease. Normally, you'd use oil.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's about it. Let's get started. So the first job we're going to do is go over to the engine and get the 3 caps into the block, and then we'll bring the then we'll bring the crankshaft in, and then we'll start putting the caps on.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Cool. Okay, Oscar.
Yeah.
So if you want to, see here, there's your neck for the cutout, right?
Yeah.
So what we're going to do, we're just going to, first of all, we're going to give that a wipe. So wipe that surface all nicely. Make sure there's no dirt on there whatsoever. Not even fluff from the cloth, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Now, just for the camera, if you look on the back of a bearing, you'll inevitably have some sort of marking. On this one, we've got Anglo England, obviously the Anglo bearings. We've got a part number which looks like the original Ferguson part number, and then it's stamped STD, which stands for standard, right? So these are standard bearings. They haven't been or the crankshaft hasn't been oversized. We know we need standard bearings because we're using a brand new crankshaft.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom you've just got the Anglo part number. Okay. So what we'll do now is just give this another wipe, just to make sure, especially on the back where it's going to be seated against the engine block. Okay, and then you can pop that in.
Check for fluff. Okay.
Okay, now what the way to do it is you put the side with the nick in first, so that it's pretty much flush.
Yeah.
And then you hold that in and you push the other side in. Do you see how that just slides in?
Yeah.
Like that? And you want to make sure that that's reasonably flush. When you put the cap on, it'll sort itself out. But do you see how that hole is now lined up with a hole in the block?
Yep.
So now you know the engine oil will come through there. It'll either come through there or go out there. It comes through there. So your oil pump is here. Your oil channel is at the back here, and it basically connects to there. Oil comes through there under pressure and oils your bearing. Right, do you want to do this middle one?
Yeah. Should we wipe the inside of the sleeves afterwards in case any dirt?
Yeah, when we get to doing them we will.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, give the bearing a wipe. Whatever you do, don't drop it.
I won't.
No, I said give it a wipe.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Don't go mental on the bearing surface.
In case it wears down.
Well, in case you scratch it.
Okay.
Okay, so you hold it with one thumb and you push the other one down with the other thumb. There you go. It's quite satisfying, isn't it?
Yeah,
It feels
just
quite nice.
suddenly pops in.
As you see, you've got something on that surface.
Oh yeah.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
So you've got to get that off without scratching. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, now what we're going to do, we're going to take a little bit of grease. I'll do one and then you can do the other, so you can see how we do it. Focus on the bearing surface, okay?
Yeah.
Don't worry too much about, you don't want to get it too much in the hole because you don't want to block the oil when it's trying to come through.
Yeah.
And we want a smooth and even, so in other words everywhere, layer of grease, okay?
Yeah.
That'll be plenty. Right, do you want to do that one?
Yep. Grease.
Okay, now here we got the crankshaft, and the first thing we need to do is get that oil seal on that I was talking about. Hoping that.
Okay, got it.
Okay, I'm going to hold this. You can slip that on.
Which way does it go?
Right, now the lip needs to go inside the engine, towards the inside of the engine.
So that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it against the flange, like that, yeah. Now flip one side over, and then that's it. Okay?
Okay.
And that's all we need to do for now. Move that cloth away. Okay, now we're going to take this crankshaft, and we want it to go down as straight as possible onto those bearings. Just like that. Okay? And then we're going to work that seal, or what they call walk it around.
Walk it around.
Now I'm going to put the joint at the top, so it's furthest away from this seal here, this joint here. So make sure that that's in all the way around, which it now is. Okay. Now, reading the manual, it says to put the middle cap in first and then to the two ends, and you will see why in a minute. The two ends are actually quite complex. Just come have a look here, Oscar.
Yeah.
One thing to look for is to make sure that your bearing shells haven't moved. That one there has moved. Can you see how it's lower that side? So you can just push that down gently.
Ow.
No? Okay, you can use this edge of a screwdriver. Just gently. And you don't want to go too far, so you put your thumb on this side. There we go. Okay?
Yep.
And that one? It's a little bit up on this side, isn't it? So press it down gently. I'll put my thumb this side. That's it. Perfect.
How's that one?
That one's fine. Right, let's get the middle cap. Now, we forgot to put the thrust washers in. Okay, then this is the thrust washers. The part number is A62294, and again we're going with a standard size. So we'll just get that open. Okay, now it's important to note here, Oscar, you see two of them have this tab on.
Yeah.
Okay, and those go on the cap. Do you see the cap has a the cap has a recess for that to sit in. Do you see there? Right, so those go in there. The other thing is, you notice how this side has got the white metal on it, and it's got two grooves in.
Yeah.
And that side is the normal steel side. And again, you can see some marking on the back, so the size, the part number, etc. So we know that those two go on there. That means that these two go down the bottom here. Okay, so they go on the inside. Sorry. Now the wearing face points outwards. Okay, it basically needs to run against the crankshaft. So that one's going to slide in there, and that one's going to slide in there. But we need to put some grease on again, just to grease them up. So we'll get the grease, and we're going to put a fair amount on the wearing face, because obviously we want that to be well lubricated when it comes time to start the engine. And we're going to put a very little bit on the back just to help it slide in, but not necessarily for any other reason.
Is it bad if I get it in the grooves?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Now remember, wearing face towards the crankshaft, right?
Yeah.
So we pop that in. Look, watch what I'm doing. We put it on the crankshaft and then we turn it, and it basically slides down the groove.
Okay.
Just like that. And you see it pops out the other side again.
Yeah. Why are there grooves?
Sorry, what grooves?
The grooves on this.
On the wearing face?
Yeah.
to allow lubrication in, to allow oil to get in.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to try to do that one? Which side is the wearing face?
That side.
Show me, point to it.
That side.
Okay, so which way is that going to go? Towards the crankshaft, perfect. So you can pop it in either way and just turn it.
Doesn't want to. Always
So
get the
you need to push it
one.
down a bit more. And oh, hang on, we need to push the crankshaft over, and then it should go in. Ah, stuck. Oh, grease is sticking now.
I always
There
get
we
the
go.
difficult one.
There we go. Okay, now we'll take the other ones and we'll put them on the cap. And what we'll do again, put a little bit of grease on the cap just to hold them on the cap.
Okay.
So just a little bit of grease on there, just to so that when they're on
Inside.
there, they're stuck. Yeah, just a little bit. And a bit on this side. All right, bring the bearing. Add the thrust bearing in.
Thrust washer, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Wearing face.
And again, wearing face
Out.
outwards. Yeah. We pop it in there. Make sure the lock tab is in its little groove.
Yep.
And
I'm
we'll
guessing.
do the other side.
I'm guessing the lock tab is to stop it rotating.
Exactly. And that stops the other one from rotating as well.
Because otherwise they could swap.
Yeah. Right, and then this cap can go straight down. Oh, hang on, forgot to put the bearing in, didn't we? Right, bring the bearing. Now remember what I said about the locating tabs, they always go to the same side, okay? So we know that that needs to go that way, do you see?
Yeah.
So we slot that down and we'll get 2 bolts. Okay, so we put a little bit of oil on the threads just to help the bolts go in. Now these bolts don't have lock tabs, right? So the conrod bolts will have a lock tab, but these have a spring washer instead.
Oh yeah.
Now what we do, we have to get this started by hand so that you know you don't strip it, because if you strip a bolt in here, that's it, it's tickets, throw the block away, start again.
Wow.
Okay, so we make sure that it goes in by hand first, as much as you can. Okay, now what you want to do is just tighten them down a little bit. Okay, that's enough. Right. Now, Oscar,
Yeah.
when you're putting bearings in, once you've done one cap, you always turn the crankshaft.
Okay.
Okay? So we're going to turn it. Oh, go on then. And what you're looking for is just to make, firstly you're spreading the grease, and secondly you want to make sure there's no tough spots, bits where it's stiff. Okay?
Wait, I'm just checking again because I've got a better grip now.
Okay, not too much because those bearings are still loose, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, right, so that's the middle cap. Now we need to do this one here, which is less complicated than the other one.
So that channel's now filled with grease.
Yeah. Okay, now this one is a little bit more complicated, right? So that one, all we had to do is look where the lock tab was and we were off to the races, right? This one is essentially the same. The lock tab does tell you where it goes. But the other thing that you can look at is you see this side, there's no screw holes on the side. This side, there is a screw. There are 2 screw holes. It's unlikely that you're going to screw anything from the inside of the engine.
Yeah.
It's more likely you're going to screw it in from the outside. And if you have a look at that face down there, you'll see that there's screw holes that match bolt holes, right?
Yeah.
So we know that that one goes that way. But as I said, even if you just rely on looking at where the lock tab slot is, then you'll know that that one goes that way. Right, so we'll give that a while. Okay. Right, bit of grease. Now again, now I remembered about these holes. The holes on this side don't matter.
Yeah.
Well, they don't matter as much. The hole in the block is the one that needs to line up 100%. I think I said to you before, sometimes these bearings, the top one doesn't even have a hole. So if you get a set like that, you have to make sure you use the one with a hole in the block and the one without a hole in the cap. But as we said, there's a channel behind this one, and so the oil, we know the oil is actually escaping there and going up back through the cap.
Yeah.
I think. Is it? It doesn't make sense now. No? So it just sits in that groove basically and runs around. I'm not sure why you need oil at the back of the bearing, but anyway.
You ruined my wire.
Well, I guess it connects with the same slot in the block, so basically it just goes back into the hole. Okay, right. Pop some grease on there. Now obviously once the engine is running and the oil heats up, it'll melt the grease and that grease will mix with the oil, so there's no harm using grease.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, that cap can now go down. We look where our locating tabs are, and we know that that one can slide down or needs to slide down that way. Right, now this one, Oscar, has loads of things going on. First thing you note is that we've got this recess in here, which is where that oil seal sits. Okay, but you see these holes? You've got 2 holes here, right? And both of those holes run back down. So when that's in the engine, basically both those holes are just draining down into the sump.
Yeah.
And what that means is that if any oil does get through into this, behind the seal, it runs, that hole takes the oil away from the seal, right?
Yeah.
So that there's less chance of that seal leaking.
Yeah.
Okay? So you've got that going on. Also, on the side here, we've got these 2 grooves. And we've got that felt seal that needs to go in there. And of course, again, if you look, there's the machine face, and that goes towards the outside of the engine. We also know that because of this recess for this oil seal. And anyway, if you have a look at where the locating slot is for the bearing, we know that that has to go that way. So that goes that way. Okay.
Yeah.
But we've got to get all these things in all at the same time, plus a bearing.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is I've read up, and basically the manual, the original Ferguson manual, tells you to put this in and then to slide the felt down here with a long, like bar, basically like a long small screwdriver or something like that. Push it down, push it down, push it down until this recess is filled. My worry is I don't know how you're going to know when that's actually in. How are you going to know whether your felt has got all the way to the bottom? Of course you can measure it, but it will compress, so you may not be all the way down. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to get the felt and we're going to put it in and hope that it goes down with this when we're putting it in, and if it doesn't we can always still push it, right? And we're going to leave it extra long in case we need to push it further and actually compress it. So if we look now, this felt, I'm going to take this away before it falls and breaks something. Now this felt, we've been soaking it in oil, just in ordinary engine oil, okay, just to get it saturated with oil, and that makes it more pliable, but also, again, it makes sure that seal is actually lubricated when the engine starts up, okay. So what we're going to do, if you can bring the Stanley knife for me, please. It's here. And we'll just cut that in half. We've got two sides, so we can just do halves. Okay, let's grease that up. Nah, we've done the felt the wrong way around. You know, go on.
What do you mean by the wrong way around?
Well, this is the bottom, not the top. So these should be the other way.
Aye.
Okay. Right, let's try and slide this in. Okay, I think that's in. And if we look from the bottom, you can see, can you see the felt?
Wait, I need to light a light. Have a go with the screwdriver?
No, we've got to find a better way of doing this. So let's put them sticking out.
Oh yeah.
And then hopefully they'll get pushed up. No?
Yeah. What if they don't?
Well, we'll make sure they do before it goes all the way down.
They're just moving down now.
Okay, so just like about 1/8 of an inch, like that, okay?
Okay.
And feed your side, well, let's get your side in first. And then this side. Yeah, like that. Right, sadly, we seem to have had a camera malfunction, and we've lost a lot of the footage. So to bring you up to speed where we are, you'll see here we've got these two felt seals that they go down the entire length of this bracket, this cap. And when you look at the Ferguson manual, it talks about first installing the cap and then pushing the felt down these two slots. And I just can't see how you do that, because this felt is super tight. So what we've done is we've essentially put the felt in. First of all, we soaked the felt in oil. You can see it's completely drenched in oil. That's just clean engine oil. Then what we did, if you can imagine, we kind of angled the felt like that, and then we pushed this down. I mean, I'm exaggerating it obviously for effect, but essentially we put the tips of the felt in so that they're sticking down below the lower face of this cap, and then slowly we've been hammering this this cap down. It's a very tight fit. There's no way you can push it in. You do have to tap it in, obviously with a soft mallet, a wooden mallet or a rubber mallet or something like that. And then we're just at the point now where the bolts are able to thread in, and we're just going to carry on with that. Basically, put in the bolts in, and then now using the bolts to pull this down. But whilst you're tapping this in, you do have to squeeze the felt in, otherwise it basically just slides out. By squeezing it, you're forcing it to go down, and you're helping it to get, to be squeezed by the block essentially. So that's where we are. We're just going to put the second bolt on, and then we're going to slowly tighten this down. Yeah, okay. Do you want to tighten those down, Oscar?
Yeah.
Now, the other thing, while Oscar's doing that, I'm going to be watching this oil seal on the back here as well, and just making sure that that goes into its proper recess within this housing. This is an extremely complicated setup here for sealing the back of the engine here, the back of the crankshaft. Obviously modern engines have a much simpler way of doing this, where basically this is all one piece and you just have a cap that comes down, and then you push the oil seal in from the side. But unfortunately, because of this flange, you can't do that on this one, so we have to make sure that that seal is located in properly before we tighten this down. Okay, good. Is that tightened up now?
Yeah.
Okay. Do that, Don.
Okay.
Right. Do the two middle ones first, and you just want to give them a quick nip, right?
That's some more. So now these.
Yeah. Okay, now these. Okay, now the next job is just to cut these off level with the block, right? So we've got to keep it as level as possible. You can leave a very, very small bit sticking out. This blade's not long enough. We're going to need a longer one. So let me just get a longer one.
That should be long enough.
Yeah. Okay, so now the other thing is you don't want it to have a feathered edge on any one of the four sides. So what you do is you cut it from each side if you're able to, or as best you're able. And I've got a feathered edge.
Can I try and sort it?
No. You can do that one.
What? That one again?
There we go. Right, do you want to do that one?
Yep.
You saw what I did, yeah?
Yeah, you went one side, then the other, then the other, then the other.
Okay. Now you're going to have to blend the blade.
Okay.
Let me do this one. It's a bit difficult. Okay. I'll just do this one because you have to bend the blade and that. Okay, now you can cut it off that way. Keep it blade flat, please.
I feel like a feathered edge.
Should be going. Okay. Okay. Hang on.
It's okay.
Yeah, there's a little feather edge there. See if you can get that off. Just take the edge off. Hang on. I don't want to cut it too far down. There we go. That'll do. Right, good. Okay, so that's that one done. Right, now these bolts, the main bearing bolts, they need to be torqued down to between 90 and 100 foot-pounds. So we're going to take it up to, we'll go to 81 to start with. Right. So we'll torque these up.
Can I try?
Yeah. Remember not to jerk it, yeah?
I know. Oh, they are tight.
Mm-hmm. Right, now we'll go up to, I've only got 103 on here. Now we'll just make sure that it still turns nice and freely, which it does. And there's no tight spots, except when it catches my finger. I'll go backwards as well. Right, now I was putting that end cap on, but I think I'm actually going to leave that off for a minute. Or for now. The reason why is I actually want to leave the engine like that now for a little bit, and then I want to torque these bolts again just to make absolutely sure. So in other words, we'll leave them for probably the rest of the week, and then torque. The first thing we'll do when we come back next week is we'll torque them up again just to make damn sure, and then put that cap on. Once that's on, then we want to test the crankshaft end float, which obviously new crankshaft, new bearings, it should be fine. Oscar, the end float is the amount of movement that the crankshaft can move this way, right? Okay. Which obviously is a very, very small amount. And that's important because You know, on this side you've got,
Mhm.
you know, on this side you've got your clutch, and you know how strong the clutch, the spring on the clutch is, right? And that's obviously pushing the engine this way all the time, pushing up against it. So there we go. All right, guys, listen, thanks very much for watching. Thanks for joining us this week. We hope that you have a lovely week ahead, and obviously we look forward to seeing you again next week. And we'll carry on with the, we'll finish off the crankshaft and we'll start on the pistons. Cheers for now.
Bye.